As a paramedic, I've showed up several times. We get the call, 911, you have a response to a cardiac emergency or cardiac arrest, and everyone is just standing around, whether it's coworkers or whether it's loved ones. They could have been doing CPR prior to our arrival, and it's unfortunate because if we were able to have people doing CPR, it could possibly save that person's life.
Well, reluctance to act is more likely if you're surrounded by a crowd. There's a natural tendency to think, number one, if you're not sure of what to do, you just hope and think that somebody's got to know more than you do. And number two, you're waiting for somebody else to take the initiative to guide you, to trigger your actions.
Training is what helped Desiree overcome this tendency, even when adults discouraged her from acting. She had practiced CPR numerous times in school prior to the incident, and the process was almost automatic for her. In recent years, emergency services in some regions have been reaching out to bystanders to give them the confidence to act. In Seattle and King County, Washington, 911 operators have been successfully talking bystanders through CPR by phone. As a result, the number of cardiac arrest victims receiving CPR from a bystander has increased from 27%, the national norm, to 56%. That contributes to the region's phenomenal 46% rate of survival from the same kind of sudden cardiac arrest suffered by Stuart Thompson, a survival rate that's more than twice the national norm. Chrissy and Albie Natalini will always be grateful for the extra help they received from a 911 operator soon after bringing their new baby home from the hospital.
We had a beautiful baby girl on February 19th, 2008.
Come home to, I guess, the typical balloons, neighbors, with your family there.
And that evening, we put our daughter down for rest. She had fallen asleep. About an hour and a half later, I woke up startled, thinking, why hasn't she woken up to breastfeed? And when I glanced down at her, she was pale. She didn't seem to be breathing. When I picked her up, everything flung back. She just was like a rag doll.
When I took Layla, at first I saw her, she was very pale and limp. She wasn't moving.
He ran over and grabbed her from me and held her up to the light to make sure that her chest wasn't rising, and it wasn't. And so we brought her back into the living room and started doing CPR.
Once I actually started doing the CPR, I do remember my wife talking to the 911 operator on the phone, giving her somewhat instructions on what to do. Even though we have taken 2 classes in CPR, I was still not totally confident that what I was doing was correct.
So she helped us count a little bit faster as we were doing the compressions, and my husband did the breathing part, and we just continued for about 12 minutes until the paramedics arrived.
Albie and Chrissy's story is also a reminder that mouth-to-mouth breathing remains a vital part of helping people in many types of emergencies, like those involving children or drowning victims. This is especially true in developing countries, where roughly 1 million newborns are dying from birth asphyxia, and drowning is more common. Steps such as making CPR training widely accessible and providing guidance from 911 operators during an emergency certainly build the confidence of bystanders and encourage them to act. But the latest chapter in the remarkable story of CPR makes it even easier to give aid, especially when you see an adult suddenly collapse.
The current hands-only guidelines has made the public want to do CPR. It simplified things for them. They're just doing hands-only CPR. They're not doing breaths. They're not checking for a pulse. And before, I think people were reluctant to do CPR. Even if they knew CPR and they didn't know someone, they may have been hesitant to do that. So it really has simplified things.
Deborah Bader would discover, in a particularly striking way, just how simple and effective the method is for helping an adult who has suddenly collapsed.
We were in the woods walking pretty far away from anything, and he turned to me and he gave me this look like he was going to give me some really bad news. And he fell over backwards and immediately fished out his cell phone, dialed 911, started screaming because I hoped someone else would hear us and call 911 too. And I immediately started hands-only CPR, chest compressions at a very fast rate that I'd learned from watching, of all things, YouTube videos about the American Heart Association's message that we should not hesitate, not wait. When an adult goes down, immediately perform hands-only CPR.
She immediately realizes what's going on and starts doing hands-only CPR. And she evidently does it pretty well because I actually came to the same day. I don't really remember that day, but I was actually conscious that evening.
So it was really through the public service announcements and the staying alive message that was going around at the time on the radio that I'd heard that you needed to do fast and quick to a really fast rhythm, to the rhythm of the Bee Gees' Staying Alive tune.
Simplifying CPR for emergencies like the one Deborah encountered is just one more way to improve the chance that bystanders can and will help a victim. But communities can further increase the chance of surviving a cardiac arrest by implementing an effective system of care. An ideal system for responding to such emergencies is often described as a chain of survival. To fully support this system of care, citizens should have easy access to CPR and AED training programs. In addition, effective CPR assistance from 911 operators should be available at all times. After all, as our rescue stories have demonstrated, you can't predict when or where you'll need to use CPR, or if it will be a stranger in need, or a member of your own family. In other words, you'll never know what your hands will be called on to do.
It's just, I guess what is unbelievable to me is that it works.
When they told me that I had saved his life, I kind of started crying again, but it was more like a relief tears that I had actually helped somebody instead of letting them die on the street.
The one thing that you need to do, you can't do, and that's point to somebody and say, I need help. And so you're relying on somebody else like Steve, who's taken the initiative, got him trained, and Steve did. He hit the long ball that day.